Today the skill that we're going to talk about with quadratics is something that's called completing the square. To complete the square, we are going to find a special c value, and the way that we are going to do that is by taking the b value, which is the one that's with the x, dividing it by 2, and then squaring it. By doing this, that will make our expression factorable to that special form that we talked about yesterday, where we take the square root of the first thing and the last thing, and that product is double the middle. So we will end the problems by factoring. So our first step is to find the c value that will make that possible. The way we find that c value is we take the middle number, divide it by 2, and then square it. So 20 divided by 2 is 10, 10 squared is 100, and our c value is 100. So this thing becomes x squared minus 20x plus 100. Then we want to factor this according to the special form that we learned a couple days ago, where we take the square root of the first thing. So what times itself is x squared?
X.
The square root of the last thing, what times itself is 100?
10.
And we confirm that if we multiply those together, 1 times 10 is 10, double it is 20, we get the middle, sign of the middle, and square it. You will have 2 answers to every question. You must give the c value and the factored form. Questions? Okay, so first we find our c value by taking the middle number, dividing by 2, and squaring. If the problem does not have decimals in it to begin with, don't put decimals in it. Fractions are actually the easier way to do this. When you square a fraction, you square the top. So 9 times 9 is 81, and square the bottom. 2 times 2 is 4. And that is our c value. So that's our first answer. Then we factor. What times itself is x squared? What times itself is 81 over 4? Well, we're thinking of square roots, and we learned yesterday when you take the square root of a fraction, you take the square root of the top and the square root of the bottom. So the square root of 81 is 9, and the square root of 4 is 2. We do the sign of the middle, and we square it. Yes?
So like, are you not able to check it though?
We can. I can multiply 1 by 9 halves, which is 9 halves. Double that is 9, and it should still be your middle number. Yep, so you can still check it.
How do you just always take the square root when it just works that way to simplify it?
Yep. Yep, it will always be a nice square root since that c value comes from squaring something. It will always be able to take a square root then. It'll actually always end up right back at that b over 2.
Okay. So it would always be the b over 2?
It'll always end up right back at the b over 2. So we're going to take b over 2 and square it. When we square a fraction, we square the top and we square the bottom. I have no idea what 17 squared is. What is it, 289?
Yes.
Okay. Over 4. And that's our c value. So x squared minus 17x plus 289 over 4. Then we factor. X times x is x squared. To take a square root of a fraction, we take the square root of the top. Well, 289 came from 17, and 4 came from 2. And then the sign of the middle. So minus. And that number in the factor will always end up right back where we started at the b over 2. So a lot of students start to think, then why even bother squaring it out and finding that c value? It will be important to us later. So for right now, we're just kind of doing it to do it because I say so. But later, there will be a reason we need that c value.
The first step, does that negative sign not even, like...
It doesn't really matter in the first step because we're going to end up squaring, and squaring a negative or squaring a positive always ends up positive. So it doesn't really matter in that first step. Is there another question or was it the same question? Okay. So in this one, you take b over 2 and square it. And you can keep the negative with it if you want. That's fine. It'll work just the same. When we square it, we square the top, square the bottom, and that's our c value. When we factor then, x times x is x squared. The square root of 49 over 4 is the square root of each of them, 7 over 2, and the sign of the middle, so minus squared. This one, take b over 2. You can do the positive or the negative. It doesn't really matter because we're going to square it anyway. And squaring makes everything positive. We get 14 squared. I have no idea what that is.
196.
196 over 4.
Wait, but it goes into an even number.
It does. So it's 7 squared, which is 49. Thank you. And then when we factor, we get x, 7, and minus.
Couldn't we just do the middle number over 2 every time? Like,
Yeah, that will always give us the factored form. Just taking the middle number over 2 will give us the factor number. But we actually need that c value of the 49 as well for something we're going to do later.
okay.
So right now it's not really important to the factoring process, but it will be important to us in the third part of our unit where we're talking about how to solve quadratic equations.
Why is it 49?
Why is it 49?
I was just saying this.
14 divided by 2 is 7. 7 squared is 49.
Oh.
This one actually divided out evenly. We've had a lot of fractions lately because we had an odd b value. When we have an even b value, we should actually divide it out. In this one, we're going to take our b value, divide by 2, and square it. It's even, so it divides evenly, gives 9 squared is 81.
Does the negative do anything?
When you square a negative, it becomes positive. Negative 9 times negative 9 will be positive 9.
So it doesn't really matter.
So it doesn't really matter in finding the c value. It does matter in factoring. That we need to make sure that we're using a minus when we factor because it's a minus 18. Okay. Any more questions? Lots of good questions today, guys. All right, so that is it for your homework. For every answer, make sure that you give both the c value and the factor. If the problem starts with whole numbers or fractions, keep working with whole numbers or fractions. But if it starts with decimals, then you may use decimals. Okay, so there are some that have decimals in them, then just go ahead and use decimals. But if it starts with all whole numbers or fractions, make sure that you stick with whole numbers or fractions. Okay?